So you're thinking of buying your first multifamily property in Somerville, Cambridge, or maybe other surrounding towns, but you have no idea where to begin. Maybe you're on the Bigger Pockets forum. Maybe you have a family member or a friend who bought a multi. You're interested, you just don't know how to get started. In today's video, I'm gonna give you guys a complete breakdown to buying a multifamily property with zero experience in Somerville and Cambridge, Massachusetts. Hey guys, if you don't know me, my name is Jankowitz. I'm a realtor based in Somerville and Cambridge, Massachusetts. I've closed over 300 transactions in the last 3 years. I really specialize with investors, and I believe in taking an investment-centric approach, whether you're a primary buyer or an investor. I have worked with a lot of owners acquiring multifamilies, renting those properties, and making sure that they have good long-term buys. Before we get into the video, please take a second to hit that subscribe button. If you guys have questions as you're going through the video, hit me up on Calendly. I'm happy to do a free 30-minute consult, answer any of your questions. Throw in questions in the comments. I'm happy to answer them there as well. Let's get into the video. So a lot of people, they want to buy a multifamily. They have no idea where to begin. What is like step one, the first thing you need to do? It's very simple. You need to get your financial life in order. And there's a lot of videos I see out there, no money down, creative financing. In my experience, that's not usually how it works, at least in Cambridge, Somerville. We're dealing with high price point properties. Most multifamilies are going for around $1 million to 1.2 starting off place for something that's actually usable and workable. So you need to get your financial picture in order. For me, that really means two things. I think the first is you need to look at your credit score. You really want to have a credit score or at least around 740. And the reason why is when you have a good credit score, you're going to get the best rates. You really want to get the best rates locked in if you're going to buy an investment property, because rates dictate how much you're paying the bank, which dictates whether the deal can be profitable or not. So you want to get your credit score in order, and the other piece is you're going to want to get your financial picture in order. As I mentioned a second ago, multifamilies usually start between around $1 million and 1.2 in Somerville at least, which is a great area to target. And so if you want to buy this property and you're going to even be living in it, you're probably going to have to put 20% down plus 1% in closing costs roughly. So we're looking at around $220,000, $230,000 in cash that you're gonna have in savings. It's a ton of money. I know a lot of people are gonna watch this video and be like, Sage, what are you talking about here? Who's ever gonna be able to do this? It's possible. You gotta work really hard. It takes a lot of time. Maybe you're in a fortunate situation where you have family or friends that can help. Maybe you currently have a property that you can leverage to pull some of the cash out, but that's roughly what you're gonna need. You're gonna wanna have around 220, 230K-ish to start really looking and have your credit score in order. So that's really step one. Step two is, okay, you've got your 220, 230. You also want to make sure that you're actually budgeting things out a little bit deeper. So in addition to that, you also want to have really 6 months of savings for your personal expenses and another 6 months of savings I would recommend for whatever the carrying costs are for this property. Because the reality is when you buy a new property, new things almost always come up. Whether you have an inspection or not, there's just going to be some things that need to happen. Now, most of these fixes tend to be relatively inexpensive, but you need to be in a situation, if you need to fix the roof, you're able to do that. A roof might go for around $20,000. If the heating system breaks, you need to make sure that you can fix that for you and your tenants. So you need to make sure that you have that buffer and you're not in a situation where you acquire a great property, something goes wrong, and then you literally don't have the funds to fix something that must be fixed. So you want to make sure that you have the proper runway to deal with those inevitable issues that come up in the first couple of years of ownership. So I would recommend basically 6 months of personal expenses plus 6 months of carrying costs in addition to that earlier number I was mentioning before you really are ready to pull the trigger. So make sure you run those numbers, get to a place where you have those savings in place, and now you're in a very good place to start looking. And that brings me to step three. Right before we start looking, there's one final thing we need to do. Step three is getting that pre-approval. Now, a pre-approval is just simply going to a loan officer, getting them to write up pre-approval. You're gonna fill out some forms, get your credit checked, get that pre-approval in hand, and that pre-approval is gonna say you can buy up to X amount of dollars with X down payment. And you want that because things move quickly, especially with good multifamily deals. Usually what happens is you're going to look at a property and you might see it on a Thursday, Friday, and you might want to put in an offer that day or the next day. It moves very quickly. And the reality is, while over the course of a year, a lot of multifamily properties come up, it's actually pretty rare that a good one comes up. So if you can't move right away, you're going to miss out on good opportunities. In fact, you're likely going to miss out on the best opportunities. So you want to make sure you have your pre-approval set and ready to go so you can pounce when we do find that deal. You've got your pre-approval in hand, your financials are in order. Now what do? Well, you want to start searching. But my advice would be not to search on your own, but to search with a realtor. And I know I'm biased, I am a realtor, but I would take it a step further. Don't work with any realtor. Work with a realtor who actually understands multifamily properties. This is a mistake that I see people make all the time. You don't want to work with a realtor who has been working primarily on single family homes and condos for the last 5 to 10 years. You want someone who is living and breathing the multifamily market. For myself, I look at multifamilies literally every day of my life, usually twice a day. I have seen every single multifamily that's come up in the last handful of years in Somerville, in Cambridge, in Medford. I see a lot of them in Arlington, Belmont, and Watertown as well. So I have a very good grasp on what the market looks like. Because I look at things literally every day of my life, I can tell you with a lot of confidence how much things will rent for, what's a bad buy from a location perspective, what a tenant pool will look like in a particular part of town. I can tell you what a good deal looks like very quickly because I'm living and breathing this. So make sure you find an investment-centric realtor to begin your search. So they're going to help educate you too, so you know what to look for, whether you're with them or not. Step 5, you're going to start looking at properties now with your realtor. And when you look through that property, you want to go through, you want to ask lots of questions, you want to point things out, you want to ask questions both to your realtor as well as the seller's realtor, and you want to really educate yourself on the market. Now, of course, you don't want to lean on the seller's realtor because they're working for the seller, not for you. Work with that buyer's realtor to really learn what to look for. From a location perspective, is this an area that's changing and growing? Are there upside long-term opportunities? What does the tenant pool look like? What's the DOM, which stands for days on market for typical rental? How will things vary if it's a 1-bedroom versus a 4-bedroom unit? What is a good bedroom to look for? What are some sort of wow factors that are going to get tenants excited and be willing to pay a premium for? These are some of just many things that I'm constantly looking for when I go through a unit. So as you educate yourself, you're going to start knowing what to look for, what are potential bombs that'll blow up in your face if you buy this thing, and what are potential upside things that maybe other people aren't seeing. Step 6, due diligence. Okay, you've looked at the property. Now we have to do some homework to make sure everything checks out. What are the rents? Are the tenants in place currently on a tenancy at will, or are they on a lease? If you're an owner occupant, you need to make sure that you can move into that property typically within 60 days of closing. So you want to make sure that the timing works where you're going to be able to move into one of those properties. If you're planning on increasing the rents, you want to look at tenancy at will and lease to understand what's possible from a timing perspective. If people are locked in for another year, you might have to carry this thing for a year at below market rates, and you might be having to take a hit there. That could be okay, but you want to understand what the risk is there. You want to understand, why is the seller selling? If it's a great property, shouldn't they hold on to it? Depending on why sellers sell, it could be an indication of a good opportunity or maybe not so great opportunity. Have there been any major updates in the last couple of years? If the roof was just replaced, that's a $20,000 expense that you're hopefully not going to have to worry about for another 20 to 30 years. If there's been major issues going on, say the heating system's been going on and off, say the cooling system's been going off, well, if it's heating, it's something you're going to have to fix right away pretty much. If it's cooling is actually a luxury. You could actually potentially wait a little bit. Always ask for a copy of the leases. You want to verify that the leases are as advertised in MLS. I've had situations where you look at the MLS listing, you talk to the list agent, they say the rent is one amount of money and it expires at a certain time. Then you get the copies of the lease and actually the document says something different. At the end of the day, the document rules the day. And then finally, if possible, get a pre-inspection. This isn't always possible. It can be really challenging, specifically for multifamilies because there are so many tenants in place. But if you can get an inspector in there beforehand, that's always a plus. But it's really a case-by-case basis. Oftentimes, I find the most competitive properties, sometimes it may just not be possible, and you may just have to take on some risk there. Step 7, now it's time to put in the offer. Now, you want to really lean heavily on your realtor on terms of what is an offer price that's going to win the deal, but also be a win for you. And when putting in the offer, one thing that a lot of people don't think about that I think they should be thinking about is, what is your exit strategy here? If this is a long-term buy and your plan is for sure to hold it for 10, 15 plus years, it might be okay to be a little more aggressive on price if you think it's a good buy, and know that in the long run, an extra $10, $20, $30,000 at the price points we're looking at, which is 1 to 1.5 million for a lot of properties, it's going to be okay probably. But if you have more of a risky financial situation, if your exit strategy is more of like a 3 or 4 year plan, you have to be ultra conservative. You cannot mess around, and that's going to put you at a huge disadvantage. And that's why for most clients, I recommend, if you're not going long term, multifamily buying may just not be for you because it just might be too high risk. But understand your exit strategy. Begin with the end in mind when you put in that offer so you can think intelligently about what makes sense from an offer perspective. Step 8, the offer's been accepted. Now what? Well, there's a couple key things you have to do. First of all, work with your loan officer, get them all the information they need. Don't drag your feet. You're potentially blowing up the deal by doing that. So whatever you need to do, get the information to the loan officer, work with them. That's the first thing. The second thing is, are there any units that are vacant and are going to need to be rented? Or are there any units where the lease is going to be wrapped up prior to closing or right around closing and are going to need to find new tenants? If it's either of these cases, you want to make sure that you build into the purchase and sale the ability to actually view the unit and show the unit so your realtor can actually start renting the unit for you. And I have done this many times. I've had many times where I've had a lease essentially signed, ready to go. And then on the day of closing, we finish out that lease. And then on day one, we have a new renter ready to go and there's no vacancy. And this is another reason why you want to work with a realtor who focuses on multifamilies. I also do rentals. I know the rental market extremely well. So I can ensure that we're getting top dollar, we're identifying good properties, but also I will physically rent the property for you and help draw up the lease, advertise the property, show the property, vet the tenants, and make sure it's a win-win. So make sure that you do that and build that into your calculus when you're buying these properties. Finally, a lot of times properties need work. Sometimes it's minor things. You know, if there's turnover, say right at closing for one of the units, you want to make sure you can have a cleaner scheduled and ready to go. If there's small things that need to happen, say a dishwasher needs to be replaced, the heating system needs to be checked. Try and line up those contractors, if possible, to come in prior to closing so they can start working on things right at closing. If not, just have them in right on day one. Get ready. Don't drag your feet and wait a month and let things drag on and create more headaches than need to be there. Step 9. All right, we're almost there. We're at the final walkthrough. This is typically the day of closing. We want to go through the property, make sure everything looks good. We want to make sure that the property is in the condition we found it. A big thing that I see commonly happen, if we're dealing with a multifamily, oftentimes we're in a situation where the tenants have left a lot of stuff in the basement year after year after year, and it can just be an absolute hot mess down there. So it's really important to make it clear that all of the stuff in the basement needs to be out of there completely, except of course for tenant stuff. And in the final walkthrough, you definitely want to verify that amongst other things. I do have a final walkthrough video. I'm going to include a link up here. So take a look at the final walkthrough video if you want to learn more about what to look for with the final walkthrough. But that's a key one for multifamilies that I always recommend clients look for. Check that basement. Congrats. You guys have closed on your first multifamily property. We're at step 10. Now what do you do? Well, it doesn't actually end here. When you close on the property, as I mentioned earlier, there's going to be some things in year one. Be prepared, expect it. Don't be freaked out. This is totally normal and almost always happens. So, what I'd recommend is set up your annual inspections, have someone checking out the heating and cooling systems and hot water tanks annually. Make sure that your leases are in a good place. You're inheriting an old lease. A lot of times leases aren't drawn up in the right way. Maybe rents aren't priced appropriately. Much more commonly, I see issues with notice periods. Make sure you have enough notice period for your units so that you have proper time to give notice to the tenant, so both you and the tenant have enough time to find a new tenant, or in the tenant's case, to find new property if necessary. And lastly, I would just say, lean on your realtor. If you have a realtor who specializes in investment, they should have all of those vendors that you need so that you're getting well-priced, excellent help, whether you have HVAC needs, whether you have snow removal needs, whether you have cleaning needs or handyman needs, all the sort of usual suspect vendor recs that you're gonna have as an investor. Lean on your realtor, ask for those recommendations. That's what they're there for. Use them. They should be able to help you. Anyways, guys, this was my complete tutorial to help you guys get set up on buying your first multifamily property. Of course, there's a lot more to it, but this should give you a good baseline understanding of the general flow that you're going to go through. I find most clients it takes 3 to 9 months to buy a multi, occasionally a little faster. Sometimes it takes multiple years depending on requirements and timing, but that's usually the zone I find. If you guys have questions, hit me up on Calendly, shoot me an email, or I'm happy to hop on a call, and I'll see you guys next time.